Welcome to today's show. My name's Brenda Bates, Medicine Woman, and with me tonight is
Jen Toffel, Medicine Woman.
And to my right is
Scott Bates,
Medicine Man, soon to be. And this is Medicine Women Reveals show. We are happy to be here tonight. Somebody wonderfully asked me the simple question is, what about allergens? Can you talk about allergens? Why, yes, we can. We're all about what does life represent, so allergies don't have to always be simple allergies. There is a story behind it. Why would we project ourselves to have allergies? So, one of the things is, what do you think allergies are? Either one of you.
allergic reaction to something in the air or the environment.
Okay, and Jen, anything?
It is about our interaction with the environment, but it's beyond what group consciousness would have us buy into as far as change of weather, change of seasons, that kind of thing, that it's only a physical symptom of what's going on. There's a deeper cause for allergies.
And I totally agree with this, because it has been something that's very interesting as we begin to evolve as our human species. We have the genetic line that constantly is flowing through every time we give birth to a new child. The new bloodline mixes, something else happens, but it's also the group consciousness. The group consciousness is made up of all the things that we agreed upon that has happened or going to happen. It could be anything fearful, it can be anything good, but what it boils down to for us is that how do we store it in the brain? In the brain, I've talked to many people about the caudate nucleus. This is that part of the brain that sits in there that governs fear. And it's a barrier between your gray matter and your midbrain. And all of the stuff that happens in the gray matter, which is when it electrifies, it functions, and it's you! It's all of the stuff from the past, present, and futures. It's everything from the group consciousness. It's everything from what you have from your soul's line to the genetic line. And when you enter that space, the first time you wake up in the morning and you're like, where am I? And you look around and you can't recognize the room or the person you're with, that is your spirit. And the moment that it starts to engage in remembering, because it is spirit that now electrifies the gray matter, which then gives all of these electrical storms about who and what you are, things you have to be afraid of, things you want to learn, the things, the personality, all of those traits, the morals, the values, the beliefs, limitations, all of that just starts to make up who you are. Depending on where you are, depends also on what you wanted to be sick with. We are physical beings, and we really learn to be human by over-identifying with everything so much that we kind of forget our true essences. While this occurs, our brain is the one that tells the body how to function. Our subconscious mind, which is just below in the midbrain, just below where the caudate nucleus is, it has all of the things that innate about who we are. Knows how to run it perfectly and healthily. The question is, why doesn't it? And as I start to ask that, then what happens is I have to go and identify with the gray matter. I have to look in your caudate nucleus as far as the fears. And why is it that your brain is telling the body to be sick? The brain usually doesn't get marked until you have a stress response. So remarkably so that when it's usually when you loss of a loved one, something terrifying like being in a plane crash, something scary like being raped, even just down to where a child gets screamed at, it can leave a mark on the brain. Dr. Hammer from Germany has done a lot of extensive research on cancer, and he found out that the emotional event that took place, marked in the brain, which he calls hammer herds, actually corresponds to the point in the body. And if that part of the brain says lungs, oh my God, this bad thing happened, it's marked in the lungs, then the physical body gets instruction from the brain that it has to malfunction. And he had a really bad experience, and his son died, and it marked into his brain, and I can't remember what body part was not functioning properly, but he had gone through and lived his own evidence of the stuff he was learning. He also is really diligent in helping people to heal their issues and heal the hammerherds so that the brain can recover, so that the brain can send the right signals to the body. Now, sometimes it is so deep that your subconscious mind says, we're not going to let you look at this because you couldn't handle it the first time. Oh my God, what do I do with this? That it had to put a protective barrier called the safety blanket. And this is just something that's just who you are. So we always ask, what is the soul willing to do? You know, and you're thinking, what does this have to do with allergies? Everything. Because as a human being, you came in with primal instincts, and one of them was the fight, flight, freeze response. And that was simple, to be aware when an animal was present and you're, before you get eaten alive, to run for cover, or if you have to attack, or you have to play dead, whatever it is you need to do.
Or you don't do anything and that's where you're frozen.
Exactly.
It's still a response.
It's still a response. And when you look at, I can't remember which doctor, I don't know if it's a doctor, but anyways, it was exposed to us that polar bears, they were doing and tagging them. So they have to chase them down, they tag them to mark that they are, why do they tag them?
So that they can keep track.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, they found out by watching that the polar bear went into a fight, flight, freeze, but it finished out the process in the stomach, and it quivered it out. They found that if they are not domesticated, then they won't hold the trauma. But being domesticated people that we are, as well as animals that we have in our household, we will keep the traumas and mark them in the caudate nucleus, which means you haven't finished it out. You haven't created closure to this. My whole job is to help you understand that you can create closure. You can create this to stop, and you can become in charge again. So allergens, we're going to be looking at all of this from every angle. The main thing you need to understand is that it's about the fight, flight, freeze. It's about what is your body doing. How does it go into that functioning? Why does it need to go into that functioning? Now just remember, the innate part of us can heal 100%. We are programmers, and we program the subconscious mind with certain rules. Now, so you understand, the subconscious mind already has that innate original blueprint. But it has to take your commands, obey you, but number one is to preserve the body. So it will do everything it can to be who you want it to be, and then it has its innate to remember the original blueprint. Allergens. I have gotten several pieces of information that is very important to look at, and I don't mean to read it, but it's kind of interesting to watch the voices of each of these people. And in this case, they come from all variety of places that I've copied and pasted and put together. And it's for instance, this one is a doctor that does all homeopathics and he naturally eats right and does all these things. And it says allergies are not the cause of any problem, but they can act as triggers that create symptoms. Some allergic reactions are the chemicals or the additives in foods or items you're exposed to. If this is the case, you should definitely consider avoiding that item, as it is toxic and harmful to the body. If this is the case, the allergen in question should test strong. Now again, this is a man that uses the vials, the little, how big are those vials? They're just
They're an
Dram
ounce.
size.
a little dram. I think it's a dram size. And they're a round little test
Little
tube
tiny
vial
ones.
that hold the imprint frequency of a particular substance. Whether it's harmful or not harmful, it still has the vibration. Okay, so he says, you know, he's talking about how he would test for it. He said the body is very toxic, and one of the toxins in the body is interfering with the natural digestion, absorption, or metabolic of that food. So if you eliminate the toxin, the body will no longer react to the body while once again be able to metabolize. Now, just to help you understand, he's referring to how he sees it as toxins. So in this case, this is toxic. Now, in homeopathic, one of the things is that you have like attracts like. So then if your body says it's that piece of food or the nut that's doing it, then you take the nut and you make it into homeopathic form, and then you tell the body to balance it out, to heal it. It's remarkable how the body does
So
it.
it cancels it out.
To some degree, it also, what it's telling the body, the innate part of the bit, is that you no longer have to be afraid of this or have to attack. Now, what's important to help you understand is that our immune system is constantly eavesdropping. It listens to every conversation you have.
That's interesting.
And it listens to your neighbor's conversation.
Hi.
And it feels the environment because that's part of its primal nature. But when it starts making chemical peptides, that it says, oh, I have to be frightened because he's a man, meaning somewhere in your past, you had said that my happy experience turned bad and a man was involved. So then you have a checklist of all the things from that one experience, that it's a man, maybe it's the color green, it's the smell of tomatoes. You know, you have all of your sensory system that marks that moment.
A geographical location, the season,
Everything,
all
yes.
of that.
Everything. Now those are your personal experiences. But what about group consciousness? We all agreed upon having same similar issues. So what happens is that people can develop issues and become a disease. And this is where you get cancer and AIDS and all of these things, because they are unresolved issues. Simply that what we rejected, that we no longer found harmonizing, we didn't know how to resolve it, so therefore it's hanging out there in the atmosphere. So that can interfere. The day I was born, the Detroit riots were going on, and a lot of things were occurring, and that can affect my physical health at the time that I'm born. You may not think it really does, but again, we are consciousness, and we're coming into a body, we're using our sensory system, knowing that our immune system listens all the time. This is what happens in the body. The food allergies, we're just going to say, happen when someone's immune system mistakenly believes that something the person ate is harmful to the body. Now what's important is to understand this is that we consciously said, it's that, and point right at that. We deliberately say that, okay? And we have to physically say it's something physical, because otherwise it doesn't make any rational sense to us.
Right, how can you understand what isn't seen?
Exactly.
And it really, I mean, there's all sorts of ideas just about that alone, of the unseen versus the seen.
We have to make rational sense of it. That's just who we are. Immediately, always listen to what people talk about. You know, oh, well, why'd that happen? Oh, it must have been, let me just look around. Oh, yeah, see, there's a physical thing that caused it. Yeah, that's it, that's it. And you're eliminating things, and you're trying to find out and get answers. You want an answer, because the answer, I mean, I remember when I went in, I can't remember what it was, except for I think it had to do with my lung. And this is before I really got into what I'm into today. And I kept going in, they're saying there's nothing wrong with me, and I'm like, okay, fine, you know. So this time I had gone in, I said, I think I've had a hernia. And all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I'm rushed to the other doctor, and then I'm rushed to the hospital. I'm like, what the hell do they know that I don't? And they said, oh, you had a great big tumor that was pressing on this. And I'm like, what? And for a minute there, I felt such great relief knowing that my physical symptoms were something that was tangible. Because you can take and heal that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's something that you can actually feel like you can do, and there is a sense of relief. But what we do for a living as soul coaches is we give you and help you what your soul is trying to tell you that you lost energy to. And that it's important that you resolve this so that you can get that energy back. Now let's go a little further. So when the body, the immune system, mistakenly believes that something that the person ate is harmful to the body, in an attempt to protect the body, the immune system produces IgE antibodies to that food. So your body, if whether it is food, person, the color, the smell, whatever it is, it'll quickly say, I am not protected. I have to survive. So it will create an antibody so that it can protect itself. So allergies will come into play in that simple formation. Did I explain that okay so far?
I think so.
Okay. So, again, the IgE's antibodies then trigger MAST, M-A-S-T cells, which are allergy cells in the body to release chemicals into the bloodstream. Again, it's looking for an enemy. And if the immune system is running around and it can't physically go on the outside and go, it's that, and that, it has to trust you that it's something you smell. Because it doesn't know whether or not it's solid or not. It just knows that you took these collective pictures and this is the threat. Sometimes it'll boil down to just even a decision you made. So it will then go, oh my gosh, every time I see the color green, I gotta hurry up and be sick. Because it's going to mean that the thing is going to unfold into the main thing that caused you to be sick in the first place. But it doesn't know that doesn't have to happen. Okay? So you have a fight-flight response that's going on in your body, even though you are not consciously actively going, oh my God! You are just like, what the hell?
Well, it's the sympathetic and parasympathetic system.
Yes.
That it's an automatic thing happening within your body because, I mean, you're not consciously aware or directing every breath you take or every heartbeat or something like that.
Yes.
It's within your system that is on kind of a form of autopilot to some degree, directed by the brain.
Exactly. And this is all you have to understand is that if you were pushed off your happy point, you're going to have something other than happy. It can be a stress. It'll be stress. And a stressor, if it's happening too much, become chronic, then this is where you can actually start creating allergens that don't need to be there. Okay, one of the chemicals is histamine. Histamine acts on the eyes, the nose, the throat, lungs, skin, intestinal tract, and causes symptoms of allergic reactions. Once the body has made antibodies against that certain food, place, sound, smell, time, these antibodies instantly recognizes it every time. Then it automatically goes into a strategy of how it has to behave. Each time this person is around it or eats it, the body releases histamines into the bloodstream again and again, creating allergic symptoms. Okay? This is you creating a reaction to something that you're not consciously aware of, but your body goes, yes I do. And so you are the sum total of your conscious and your unconscious, all of the accumulations that you've ever had, wrote, or any stories, anything at all, you are that. Okay?
You ready for a break yet?
We're going to have different voices literally talking about it in another type of voice about the subject. Main subject, I want you to understand allergens come from stressors. The stressors has to become from your response. How you've responded, how your family's responded, and when you pass those down to the family, then it just becomes a genetic issue. You can help yourself and your family by healing certain and creating certain closures. So Jen's going to have a certain voice, and she's going to read a few things. I may interject, and then I'll have Scott do some stuff too. So Jen, do you want to go first?
Sure. So, re-examining the fight or flight response. This fundamental physiological response forms the foundation of modern-day stress medicine. The fight or flight response is our body's primitive, automatic, inborn response that prepares the body to fight or flee from perceived attack, harm, or threat to our survival. So, what happens to us when we are under excessive stress? When we experience excessive stress, whether from internal worry or external circumstance, a bodily reaction is triggered called the fight or flight response. Originally discovered by the great Harvard physiologist Walter Cannon, this response is hardwired into our brains and represents a genetic wisdom designed to protect us from bodily harm. This response actually corresponds to an area of our brain called the hypothalamus, which, when stimulated, initiates a sequence of nerve cell firing and chemical releases that prepares our body for running or fighting.
Yes. Keep going.
Okay. So when our fight or flight response is activated, sequences of nerve cell firing occur and chemicals like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol are released into our bloodstream. These patterns of nerve cell firing and chemical release cause our body to undergo a series of very dramatic changes. Our respiratory rate increases. Blood is shunted away from our digestive tract and directed into our muscles and limbs, which require extra energy and fuel for running and fighting. Our pupils dilate. Our awareness intensifies. Our sight sharpens. Our impulses quicken. Our perception of pain diminishes. Our immune system mobilizes with increased activation. We become prepared physically and psychologically for fight or flight. We scan and search our environment, looking for the enemy. When our fight or flight system is activated, we tend to perceive everything in our environment as a possible threat to our survival. By its very nature, the fight or flight system bypasses our rational mind, where our more well thought out beliefs exist, and moves us into attack mode. This state of alert causes us to perceive almost everything in our world as a possible threat to our survival. As such, we tend to see everyone and everything as a possible enemy.
Yes, that's what you got to heal. Because we, without realizing it, will always think there's a threat. That means we lost our right to safety and freedom. And because of this, we feel like we can't survive, then that will start us into thinking that they could be a potential enemy. I don't want to have a relationship with people because they could be the enemy. I have watched group consciousness come into a state where it is meant that the husband and wife be enemies. That eventually, we have a friend, you're going to have him as an enemy. And it was like, wow. And that was just based on sarcasm. Always have to be the joke. What else, Jen?
You know, when I first, it was actually before I got married, describing what it was like to be with my then boyfriend, people would say, oh, so you guys are like the Bickersons.
The Bickersons. Wonderful.
Which becomes a nickname, and it's kind of like, but that's like,
You know
but that's what life was like. That's what relationship was. And I would have to be on the defense because it's that sense that I could not be absolutely vulnerable or authentic because whatever I was going to do was going to be attacked in some way, either through sarcasm or just direct insult.
And in a way, some of them can be funny. It's called banter. And it's great, especially there are times that Scott and I will do the banter and we'll laugh our heads off because it's just hilarious. But when the banter goes bad, it becomes the Bickersons without realizing it. You are creating a heated discussion with a fake smile, and it's the rhythm of how that relationship is supposed to be. Which, again, one of the main things I help people understand and heal as a soul coach is let's heal how you see people as the enemy. At first they're saying, I don't see people as the enemy. Well, maybe your job's the enemy. Maybe schoolwork's the enemy. But when you are going, ugh, they literally, you're not in sync, and therefore they become the enemy. And so that is where I help people understand that they need to really hear how they define it and really stop the enemy so that you can feel safe and have a survival going on at the same time. Because that's what the subconscious mind wants you to understand. You're already safe, but you don't believe it. Because you don't believe it, then you create all these other things that the subconscious mind has got to help you to cooperate and to heal, and most of the time you end up compromising with yourself.
Well, we were looking at my need to have sarcasm in my life.
Ah, yeah, okay.
And it really was a defense mechanism. Because sarcasm was already present in the household, I had to learn how to do it in order to fit in. Otherwise, I mean, I would have just, I don't know what I would have done had I not had that kind of defense. Just to even just walk down the hallway or whatever.
And what's funny, after all this time, you know, people would say and do things, and to me it would hurt. I could always feel the sting. And I don't want to play that. And they would always say, you're too sensitive, and you got to learn to take a joke. Well, the joke was meant to hurt, to guilt you, shame you, call you stupid.
When I'm the butt of it, then it's not funny.
No. So as I had this weekend, I was around people, and it was amazing because I literally could not be around this person. I'm like, oh my God, because their field was throwing me in a stressful situation, and my body says I don't know how to cope with it. And I'm like, oh, neither do I.
Well,
except for just to stay away from it, to tap here and there. And
how would you take care of a pet porcupine?
very carefully.
Exactly. I mean, that's...
And so but the gentleman that was there with us, I'm like, how can you be around her for hours? Because he's complaining, you know, to some degree about her. And I'm like, come on, you need to tell me. What is it? He goes, oh, he says, I use wit. I know they're going to do it anyway because that's just who they are. So I am always on top of it to just be witty and goofy, and they want that. He says, and that's the only way that I know that, you know, having that communication is to do this. And I said, that's interesting.
But it just takes after a while, it just takes so much energy to keep that going.
You know, but he is always looking at it as life is a joke, and, you know, let's make it a joke, and let's make it fun, and let's make life. So looking from him, it was like, wow. Because, you know, he's in a situation where people don't like him one way or the other because of his sexual orientation, or it is, you know, just because he believes in one faith versus another. So there's always going to be something. But he uses wit. But again, I don't even want to have to entertain that with them. So I basically have been healing them out of my life. Okay, so healing that everybody's the enemy. And was there anything else that you saw in there? Or do you want me to just jump over here and I'll come back?
Why don't you do that?
Okay, so you can look through that, keep us posted on the time.
Okay, I'm going to read some of Psychology of Survival. It takes much more than the knowledge and skills to build shelters, get food, make fires, and travel without the aid of standard navigational devices to live successfully through a survival situation. Some people with little or no survival training have managed to survive life-threatening circumstances. Some people with survival training have not used their skills and died.
That's important to understand.
Yes.
Because, you know, my fear, and it's one thing that I had to learn to heal and still in the middle of, is the will to survive. And as I was reading this, and this is an app I found on my phone, and it's actually quite unique. I'm not even sure how it got there, but it's very good to understand. Even those people that are trained, then they could die. But when my son got hit with a baseball bat in the head, I immediately turned to an emergency response person, and they sat.
We were at a Halloween party. And
they just sat there, did nothing, and I looked to my husband and I said, "Screw them." And then I can't remember who I said, "Go get my purse and my keys." And immediately my husband's applying pressure. I already know that I've done this a billion times, can be under pressure. So that we threw him and my son in the car. I got in the car, drove there, and got us there safely. Made sure the doctor had my son, everything was good. Then I went outside and then I fell to pieces. But I know I can survive. But it's just those other little things, like, can you survive a tornado? They scare the crap out of me. I don't want to be trapped alive. And then will you drown or not drown? It's those things that my body had, and my caudate nucleus has been carrying, that it hadn't survived. And the fighting of it, the process of actually having to endure it, was like, oh, hell no. Just like when I hear my husband and my daughter arguing, not really bickering, but arguing, I didn't lose it this time. Usually my body starts to go into this, oh my God, I can't handle this. And I said, Jan, listen, I'm not losing it. So it felt good to know that whatever it is I'm enduring, I didn't have to see it as dread, fear. or any of that stuff. Okay, so continue on.
Okay, this is kind of like on what you were saying. A key ingredient in any survival situation is the mental attitude of the individual involved.
Okay, let's look at this. The mental attitude is what really and I, Jen, started looking at last night. I go, oh my God, it's not that I emotionally can't handle it, I mentally can't handle it. I remember giving birth. As I'm laying there giving birth to my first child, my mental self-talk wouldn't shut up for anything. And the pain was just there, and I couldn't just endure the pain. I had to find a way to make it stop, try to handle it. And this is way before I had healing tools, and way before I had Reiki. And all my brain was just constantly, shoot me now, cancel. But I mean, literally, it just wouldn't shut up, and it was just complaining, and it was just, and I realized that when I read that line, and I asked Jen, can I mentally survive? And it says, I don't want to. I don't have the will to mentally survive. I don't want to. And that's the avenue that I'm going to go down to heal. Because I know that I have the will to live. But do I have the will to survive that mental process of that duration? Okay, go on.
I don't think I read this one. A key ingredient in any survival situation is the mental attitude of the individual involved. Having survival skills is important. Having the will to survive is essential.
Yes.
Without a desire to survive, acquired skills serve little purpose and invaluable knowledge goes to waste. There's a psychology to survival. You will face many stressors in an survival environment that ultimately will affect your mind. These stressors can produce thoughts and emotions that, if poorly understood, can transform a confident, well-trained person into an indecisive, ineffective individual with questionable ability to survive. Thus, you must be aware of and be able to recognize those stressors commonly associated with survival. It is also imperative that you be aware of your reactions to the wide variety of stressors associated with survival. This chapter identifies and explains the natures of stress, the stressors of survival, and those internal reactions that you will naturally experience when faced with the stressors of a real-world survival situation.
Okay, and we're going to get back to that. Now, in my big book of everything I have with Michael J. Lincoln, PhD, The Messages of the Body, Stress Effects says, I won't accept this, is the key phrase. They are having a difficult time dealing with the realities and the events of their life. They wish it weren't that way, and they are resisting the situation intently. Now, here's the important thing. What resists persists, and so part of the key ingredient of why we choose healing tools is it gives you the opportunity to stare it down, to look it into its eye, and because you're using a healing tool, you'll actually start to resolve it. So it'll actually start to take the edge off, and it'll start to go away. And so then you remove the intensity. So let's read this again. I won't accept this. They are having a difficult time dealing with the realities and events of their life. They wish it weren't that way. It is. They are resisting the situation intently. Well, you don't have to worry about that because you're going to heal. Their body is going into overdrive and overwhelm in reaction to all negative feelings and reactions they have to what is happening. It is the pattern that started in their severely dysfunctional family, and it may not be that because it's in the genetic line, the encodings, the group consciousness. I'll finish reading. It says, in which nothing ever worked well, and in which whatever was unacceptable no matter what. And stress just happens to be in everybody's life. Okay, we're back. I hope you're enjoying this program so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Scott talk a little bit more. So go ahead.
Look at stress. Stress is not a disease that you can cure and eliminate. Instead, it is a condition we all experience. Stress can be described as our reaction to pressure. It is the name given to the experience we have as we physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually respond to life's tensions.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is further down it talks about the importance of stress. So why don't you read that too?
Okay, we need stress because it has many positive benefits. Stress provides us with challenges.
Challenges, that's awesome, to help us know to do what? Read the next.
It gives us chances to learn about our values and strengths. Stress can show our ability to handle pressure without breaking. It tests our adaptability and flexibility and can stimulate us to do our best. Because we usually do not consider unimportant events stressful, stress can also be an excellent indicator of the significance we attach to an event. In other words, it highlights what is important to us.
And it also helps us motivate us. Now, the interesting thing about motivation is that one of the simple thing is that my husband is that the stress of being in his household when he was growing up was you could not sit still. If you were caught just sitting and not doing anything productive, then there could be consequences. And so he had learned this quite well. So just about, a couple weeks ago, I'm sitting there, I look over, and as soon as I sat down, my husband's, I gotta go. And I'm like, why? And I said, did you notice how you get up and leave the moment I enter the room? I said, I could totally take offense to that, do I stink? What's it? I says, but notice this. And so he stopped, he thought about it, he says, oh yeah, there's no way we were never allowed to what? Sit still?
Pretty much. I mean, always had to be busy,
Always had to be busy.
Idle hands at the devil's work and all that kind of thing.
And so I said, let's heal that. So we sat down and we did some tapping or some, hope therapy or something. So now the results is that he has eliminated that. He doesn't have to fight, he doesn't wrestle, it's resolved. So now he was sitting there the other day and, 3 or 4 hours later, and I says, honey, I noticed we took and removed your motivation to get things done, because he had said, dang, a whole week went by and I didn't get nothing done. I says, we gotta find another way to motivate you.
Yeah.
So, without realizing it, he used it as a motivation. So, when you read a little bit further, I think it was the list, what happens when a person's stressed?
Well, they have difficulty making decisions. There's angry outbursts, forgetfulness, a low energy level, constant worrying, propensity for mistakes, thoughts about death or suicide, trouble getting along with others.
Yeah, and there's a list that's even longer. You got any more?
Withdrawing from others, hiding from responsibilities, and carelessness. That's what they have listed.
And then Jen, what else did we find?
So, going back to seeing that everyone and everything's a possible enemy. Like airport security during a terrorist threat, we are on the lookout for every possible danger. We may overreact to the slightest comment. No. Our fear is exaggerated. Our thinking is distorted. We see everything through the filter of possible danger. We narrow our focus to those things that can harm us. Fear becomes the lens through which we see the world. So now we can begin to see how it is almost impossible to cultivate positive attitudes and beliefs when we are stuck in survival mode. Our heart is not open. Our rational mind is disengaged. Our consciousness is focused on fear, not love. Making clear choices and recognizing the consequences of those choices is unfeasible. We are focused on short-term survival, not the long-term consequences of our beliefs and choices. When we are overwhelmed with excessive stress, our life becomes a series of short-term emergencies. We lose the ability to relax and enjoy the moment. We live from crisis to crisis with no relief in sight. Burnout is inevitable. This burnout is what usually provides the motivation to change our lives for the better. We are propelled to step back and look at the big picture of our lives, forcing us to examine our beliefs, our values, and our goals.
Now, that's important for you to understand. Again, this is all related to allergies, because there's simply all of this that you grew up constantly thinking there has to be war. There's always an enemy. You can't survive. You have to fight for your freedom. Where did you right? I have no entitlement. Well, I found out that suffering is an option. Life can be better chosen, and it is when you start to resolve these issues that an awakening occurs within yourself, that judgment is no longer needed, that having to constantly be under stress because it makes you feel important, or you get work done, or you look like you are a good worker, whatever this is, the pimp and the hoe dynamics, which is simply about what, Jen? When you have the pimp and hoe dynamics, it is taking the dream, somebody else's, and doing what with it?
Putting it into your head.
By manipulation, control. If I wanted a certain thing to occur, and I was controlling everything in my life, and it's going to be my way or the highway, then even if she's my friend, I'm not going to treat her as a friend really, because all of a sudden I want this done. So I'm going to say, oh, Jen, and without realizing it, I'm going to try to manipulate it to go the way I want. That's not really considered a friendship. And you...
Well, I was also thinking of the idea in my marriage, the idea of becoming a mom.
Oh, yes.
It just felt like it was the next logical thing to do, but then you kept saying, you gotta get real, do you really want to be a mom? And I kept saying, yes, I do, that's the next thing. I did this, I went to school, I followed, the professional idea, this is what I'm supposed to do, then get married, then have a kid or two or however many, and
I wanted to make sure you had to know your rights, because I didn't even know I had the right to say no to having babies.
Right, and it was like, wait a minute, but I'm with this person, and this is what we're gonna do. And then it was like, maybe not so much. So then it just became getting real with the idea that to some degree, it was their idea. For a while, I wanted kids, but then it was like, I got to the point where now it's like I'm approaching 40, and it's kind of like, I don't know that I would want to,
Yeah, but it's all
but it's
about
that
these
choice.
dreams.
I didn't know I had the choice for a while.
You both were creating your realities based on how you grew up. And so there was always stress, there's always not fitting in, there's always about not having enough money, not being able to do this, and then the joy was a peak here and there, but if you let somebody see your joy, then okay, when's the shoe gonna drop? So you trained you guys self to be this. And he wanted your life to be the way he thought you should be as a person that works, as a mother or this. And he wanted his life to be carved the way he wanted it to some degree. And you had different expectations. And then as two people are pulling instead of really working together, it can tear it apart because you're no longer in sync.
Right, whose dream is going to be in charge?
Yeah, and what happens is you learn to see people as the enemy, you're never going to get what you want. And allergies is about inner crying. Okay? They are experiencing the effects of suppressed grief. What do I mean by suppressed?
You just don't have the ability to express it. I remember way back once upon a time when I was in therapy, this is a good 20 years ago, the idea of shoving my emotions down. I didn't even know what that meant. Until we kept talking about it, it's like, oh yeah, I couldn't really express, I didn't have the right to express my emotions. I didn't know what healthy anger looked like.
Huh?
Could I just sit there and cry if I was sad, or, instead of having people, don't cry, you shouldn't cry, why are you crying? Everything's gonna be okay, you don't need to cry. Crying is a natural process.
Right.
And so it was just understanding the idea that all that became suppressed. And it was just, I had allergies for a number of years, but it was because I didn't have the ability to express.
Exactly.
Or even understand what that meant.
Even though she was a rebel to some degree, she still didn't have the ability to express. And, you would think...
expressed a certain way.
Yeah. You
through the form of being a rebel.
But you still didn't get to
right,
express what you wanted to, so there still was an inner crying
right,
that was going on.
The rainbow of emotions, or whatever you want to call it, the array of emotions, it kind of just got this one lens through.
And what you have to remember is chemical peptides will make you or break you. Positive thinking, negative thinking, one will empower, the other will deplete. That's just the way the nature is. But the chemical peptide process will decide whether or not, if you take the acuteness and you had it immediately, what will happen is what? You will then, what, is there a problem?
No, go
Oh,
on.
I'm good?
Keep going.
Okay. The chemical peptides make you go into a fight, flight, freeze. For every thought you think, you create chemical peptides. You have 41 thoughts per minute. The one you give the most attention to, you think that would be the one that would get the chemical peptides. But it is the one that's not resolved, the one that's not being paid attention to, the one that's causing you to, oh my God, it's the fear, it's this, it's that. Because I have had great many thoughts of positiveness, but it's the underlining foundation that ends up causing you to be sick. Why? Because the chemical peptides that you're creating, so you can feel what you're thinking, but also to make you act and be how your thoughts are. So you become your thoughts. And if you don't become your thoughts, then other people. So you create a physiology, meaning your physical response will respond to those chemical peptides. If you are unable to express it, so let's say we made chemical peptides of anger, okay, and you didn't able to express it because you bit your tongue, all right, and you're like, oh God, I gotta go another couple hours like this. When you don't have a way for it to go out, your body is going to build it up and say, oh my God, I need to run around the block 30 times because I have no way to express these chemical peptides properly. And so, because
you get indigestion,
so
your body does react.
Yeah, but in turn, it causes all these other reactions. And she's absolutely right. So when you think of allergies, so now we're just going to, again, look at this a little bit further of definitions, because there's several of them. Like I said, it's about endocrine. And what will happen is that you can create colds, symptoms, flu, physical sickness, diseases, allergens that can be that you know you're going to have to endure this every single day. Then this will occur. They are seeking to elicit love in an indirect manner, since they found that they did not get love they needed as a child. They're longing for the mother love or that of the mother's stand-in. They're experiencing the effects of unexpressed grief over felt rejection by an extremely smothered, loving, or cold mother.